In order to subscribe to my channel, please click here or click here. Please share, comment, and like my videos and channel. Hello guys, welcome back to SaaS with ServiceNow. In this video, I will be showing you execution order of scripts in ServiceNow. You might have heard this question during interviews or maybe in some ServiceNow discussions, that how different scripts in ServiceNow gets executed one by one. Majorly, what exactly their orders are, how exactly they gets executed, which particular script runs first, maybe business rule, maybe client script, maybe UI policy, how exactly they gets executed. Because if I talk about a table or a form, you can write different types of scripts like business rules, UI policies. Even you can write multiple types of business rules like after, before query, before update, after update. How exactly these scripts gets executed. You can also write client script, that is also different types. You can write UI policy, you can write workflows, you can write data policies, but how these different scripts gets executed in an order. That is what I will be showing you a demo, that when a user opens up the form, how different scripts gets executed in the system. Because this particular point is very important to know for a developer. Because if you are performing the development in ServiceNow, how exactly script runs, what exactly their execution is, that is something very important to know for a ServiceNow developer. So in order to show you this execution order, I will be using 4 different elements. The first is user interaction, because user is the main person who will be interacting with the forms, who is basically performing some action, maybe opening the form, submitting the form. So user interaction is the one piece which we'll be using, and I will be showing you as part of this demo as well. Then we have client side. So you definitely write client side scripting like client scripts, you write UI policies, those run on client side. Then you have server side. That means which runs the server side code, basically which does a query to a database maybe, which pulls the record, but how it pulls the record. And that is something we have as a database. Because ServiceNow, overall ServiceNow, I think everything in ServiceNow is like a table, but they also have a database from where you query the records and display to the user. So these are the 4 elements we will be using, and I will be showing you this demo by using these different elements, that how exactly the whole process, the execution works when a user interact with the form and perform some action. Let's start the demo. Let's say we have a user who has already logged into ServiceNow instance. And now this user wants to create a new incident record, or maybe he wants to open an existing record, incident record. So in that case, he might access the module. He accesses the module, click on create new button. That means he will be requesting for a new form. Or maybe he can request for the existing form of an existing record. Now when user requests for a form, what is the first thing which will run? And that will be query business rule. So query business rule will always run first. That hey, I have to query something from where? From the database. So when user opens up a form, it always basically run this query business rule, go to the database, and then gets the data. Now after running query business rule, then it runs display business rule. So if you have written display business rule on the same table, let's say in this example we have incident, then it will run display business rule. Once display business rule has run, then it will go to the next script. But till then, data will not be displayed to the user. The reason behind it, because we still have other scripts which needs to run before presenting the data to the user. And that is onload client script. So after running query business rule and display business rule, it runs onload client script. And after onload client script, till now, data is still not presented to the user. User still can't see the form. He can definitely see, if I talk about in practical world, he can see right away. But we are talking about all the scripts which are running in the backend. So it will run the onload client script, and then it will run onload UI policy. We don't have specifically onload type UI policy, but you also have a checkbox, so you can run UI policy onload as well. You can also run it if you change something. So it kind of, I would say, is same. So you have on change and onload for UI policy as well. So it will run onload UI policy. That means first it will run onload client script, then it will run onload UI policy. Now it will display the data to the user. Then user can see the data, because whatever action system has to take as part of onload client script, and then it will run onload UI policy, and then system will populate the data as per the whatever logic you have written in these two scripts. And then once data is presented to the user, then user will perform some changes. So let's say I go to the system, I open the form. It will run all these scripts as we talked about them. Then data will be presented to me, and then user will perform some changes. That means if let's say I'm a user, I will go to the system, and then when data will be presented, then I will perform some changes. Maybe I will change state field. Maybe I will change short description field. In that case, once I will do those changes, then system will run on change client script, because that's what it has to do. So if I will change state, so maybe if you have written any on change client script, it should definitely run that first. So as part of the user interaction, so when I have got the data presented in front of me on the screen, then if I make any changes to the different fields I have, then it will run on change client script. Now after running on change client script, it will also run UI policy, and that is also on change UI policy. So maybe you are changing the state, and when I change the state, maybe you have written a UI policy that it should make maybe a particular field as mandatory. So it will definitely run UI policy as well. So first it will run on change client script, and then it will run UI policy. Now after running UI policy, let's say you have a button. That means you have a UI action. So I have opened up the form. I have changed some fields. It has also changed some other fields as well. Let's say because of some client script and UI policies I have written. And then I have a UI action. So as a developer, maybe a developer has created a UI action. So user will see that UI action and user has to use it. So user clicks on that UI action. So in that case, it will run UI action. But that is also client side. After running that, user will submit the form. That means I will save the form, or maybe I will submit the form. That yes, I am done with the data filling, and now I want to save the data I have presented in front of me, available right now. So I want to save that record in the database. So user overall submits the form. When user submits the form, now other elements, other scripts will run. So after submitting the form, it will run on submit client script. So if you have written any on submit client script, it will run that particular script first after submitting the form. Now, once on submit client script is done, then it will run server side UI action. So let's say you also have UI actions like save, and update, maybe update as well. A lot of other UI actions, and you can create your own UI actions as well. But in this case, if it will save it first, if it will submit it first, so first it will always run on submit client script, then it will run server side UI action. So whatever code, whatever server side code you have written in your UI action, it will run that first. Client side UI action script, it has already ran before submitting the form. Now, after running server side UI action, it will run before business rule. That means I'm going to submit the racket. And I have basically clicked on UI action as well. And it is taking some action on server side. But at the same time, will it update the data in the database? Answer is no. The reason behind it, if you have written before business rule, that always runs before something gets inserted or updated in the database. So in that case, it will run all the before business rules, but there is a condition around it. The condition is it will run all before business rules and those who have order less than 1,000. And that's one of the condition. It's an actual condition. If you will definitely find the order of execution, as I mentioned in ServiceNow documentation as well. They have mentioned around business rules and how exactly script engines works and how exactly they gets executed. But overall, all the business rules, those who have order less than 10,000, they will be executed all before business rule. Once all are done with the execution, then it will run the workflow. It will run the assignment rules. It will run data policies. It will run execution plans. And there are a lot of other scripts as well. Overall server-side scripts like workflow, assignment rules, data policies, execution plans. But do you think they run in an order? Answer is no. After before business rule, those who have order less than 1,000, after execution of those business rules, it will run all these different kind of scripts. But there's no defined execution order for these scripts. Overall, system will run all these scripts. It might run together. There's no defined, as I mentioned, there's no specific order for the execution of these scripts. System will run all of them accordingly. Now, after execution of all of these scripts, then system will run before business rule those who have order greater than equal to 1,000. Now, before execution of workflow, assignment rules, data policies, and execution plans, system was running all the before business rules where order was less than 1,000. Now, after running workflow, assignment rules, data policies, and execution plans, system will run before business rule those who have order greater than equal to 1,000. But till here, database has not been updated or inserted yet. The reason behind it, we are still running the before business rule. So whatever action I have to take, I'm still trying to validate it and calculating it in the system right now. So once before business rule is executed, or maybe we have different business rules, before business rules more than 1,000 order, they will be executed, and then it will perform database operation. So after execution, overall, after execution of all the business rules, that is before business rules, system will then take some action, perform some operation in the database. That means maybe it will update the table or maybe update the fields of those tables. It will create the record. Maybe it will delete the record, depending on the operation which user is taking. Now, after performing the operation, that means, let's say, table has been updated. That means database has been updated with new values. That means system has performed some operations, database operation. Now, after that, system will run after business rules. So all the business rules, those have type as after, will be running after this database operation. So once data is updated in the system, the database operation has been performed, then system will run all the after business rules. However, even for after business rules, we have similar kind of execution. Like all the after business rules less than 1,000 will run first. Then system will run other scripting engines, server-side scripting engines. And then it will run all other after business rules with order greater than 1,000. But overall, it will run all the after business rules. The after running after business rules, system will execute query business rules. That means it will query the database again. And in that case, database will be queried. And once database will be queried, after running query business rule, it will run display business rules. So after running display business rules, so basically now it is also preparing the data, because I tried to update something. I have updated it. It ran the after business rules. And now maybe I have to pull some other data as well. In that case, it will run the query business rule. It will query the database, and then it will again run the display business rules. And after that, it is still not displaying the data to the user, because we are still going back to the same kind of scripting execution, because after this display business rule, it will run onload client script again, because this time we have time to return the data to the user. I am on the form. I'm opening the form. I've got the data, which ran all the before and other scripts we had before business rules, or onload client scripts, UI policy. I have got the data, but before that data is being presented to me, I'm also doing some changes. So I'm performing some changes. I changed something. I submitted the data. After submission, that means I'm saving the record. I still want some more data because it will reload it. So in that case, when I'm getting the data, then it will again run all these scripts. So when I'm querying the data and I'm running the display business rules, then it will run onload client script, and then it will also run onload UI policy. And then after running UI policy, the data will be returned on the UI. That means user will be able to see the data now. That means overall data, whatever processing we wanted to have in the system, that has been executed, all the scripts has been executed, and now finally user can see the final data after execution of all these scripts. Let's do a recap quickly. User request for a form, and then system runs query business rule, and it query the database. Then it runs display business rule, then onload client script, then onload UI policy, then it displays the data to the user, then user performs some changes of the form, then it runs onChange client script, it also runs onChange UI policy, then user clicks on any UI action or a button on the form, it runs UI action, but that is also client side. The user submits the form, and then it runs on submit client script, and then it runs server side UI action, and then it runs before business rule with order less than 1,000, and then it runs workflows, assignment rules, data policies, execution plans, and then it runs before business rule greater than equal to 1000, and then it also performs database operation as per the action taken by user. And after taking the action, after performing the operation, it runs after business rules, and then it runs query business rules, and then it basically queried the database, and then it runs display business rule, and then again onload client script, and before presenting the data it runs UI policy, that is also onload, and at last data is being returned to the UI, and then user sees the data. So finally data is being presented to the user, and user can see that data, and whatever action he has taken as part of the change of the fields and all, user can see after execution of all the scripts we have in the system. So this is how system runs all these scripts in ServiceNow.